In this part of the lesson, we're going to look at some examples, but let's review how we're going to describe our data set. So remember, we're going to use the acronym SOCS. We're going to describe the shape, which means unimodal, bimodal, as well as if it is symmetric or skewed left, right, or uniform. Then we're going to identify, using our upper and lower fence formulas, we're going to identify if there is an outlier. Then we're going to determine which central measure we're going to use, depending again if there is an outlier. And then we're going to give the value of that measure, either the mean or the median. And then lastly, we're going to describe the spread of the data. We're going to use MAD if there is no outlier. We're going to use the IQR if there is an outlier. So let's get started. Here we have a set of data of the summative grades of 4th period. Let's find the mean, the median, the 5-stat summary, and then describe. So I have already calculated these ahead of time. So our mean was 81.9. I am going to round that to 82 since we're talking about grades. The median is 82 as well. And you can see that our graph is very symmetrical. So that's why these are they are the same. And then our 5-stat summary is going to be 70, 77.5. That's Q1. Our median, we said, was 82. Q3 is 88, and our maximum value is 92. When we find the IQR, the difference between Q3 and Q1, we get 10.5. The MAD is going to be 5. When I determined if the lowest score was an outlier, so let's look up here. Our lowest score looks to be 70, but let's make sure. So the statement I got testing the lower fence was 70 is less than 61.75. That is false. So 70 is not an outlier. Then on the upper fence, my statement was 92 is greater than 103.75. Again, false, so we have no outlier. So the distribution is unimodal and symmetric. So we use the term bell-shaped with no outlier. So bell-shaped goes hand in hand with no outlier. Since there's no outlier, the measure of center is going to be the mean. So we're going to say its mean is 82 with a MAD of 5. So when we have no outlier, we're using MAD and the mean. Okay, let's take a look at the science grades. We can see that most are hovering over to the right side, but we do have some grades that are pulling it down. So again, I've already pre-calculated all of this. So our mean was 87.26. We will round that to 87. Our median was 90. And we could expect that the mean was lower than the median because this low grade here pulled the average down below the median. Our 5-stat summary, the minimum was 60, Q1 82, Q2 90, Q3 a 94, and our maximum score in science is a 97. The IQR is going to be the difference between Q3 and Q1. That's a difference of 12. The MAD is 6.26. When I checked for the lower fence, the statement I got was 60 is less than 64, and that is true. So 60 is an outlier. When I tested the upper fence, 97 is greater than 112. That is false. So we do have an outlier of 60. The distribution is skewed left. It is the direction of the tail with an outlier of 60. Since we have an outlier, we're going to use the median to describe the center measure, and it was 90. Remember, the median and IQR are resistant measures. And we're going to use the IQR because we had an outlier, and it was 12. Here we have hours of schoolwork. So our average of schoolwork is going to be 1.6. I'm not going to round that. Since we're talking have really small numbers, rounding would be too much of a skew. Our median value is 1, our 5-stat summary. The minimum of hours of schoolwork is 0. Q1 is 1. Q2 is also 1. Q3 is 2. And our maximum amount of hours of studying or schoolwork is 6 hours. Our IQR is 2 minus 1. Our MAD is 0.96. When I did the lower fence, I have 0 is less than negative 0.5. That is false. My upper fence statement is 6 is greater than 3.5. That is true. So we have an outlier of 6. This time, most of the data lies on the left and the tail is going to the right. So the distribution is skewed right with an outlier of 6. Therefore, we're going to use the median of 1 with an IQR of 1. Now let's take a look at our last example. Height of basketball players, we can see it's pretty uniform. And so when we calculate this, our average height is 79. Our median is 79, and that makes sense. Our 5-stat summary, we have a 78 for the minimum value, 78 for Q1, 79 for Q2, 80 for Q3, and 81 for a max. Our IQR is 2. So the variability is very tight. We don't have a lot of variability. The MAD was 0.67. My lower fence statement is 78 is less than 75. That is false. The upper fence is 80 is greater than 83. Again, that is false. So there's no outlier, which we would assume. So the distribution is uniform with no outlier. Therefore, we're going to use the mean, which is 79, but it's the same as the median, and we're going to use the MAD. So we can see that each data point was on average 0.67 units away from the mean. So this data is very close together. Okay, so just remember S for the shape, O for possible outlier, C for which measure of center you're going to use, and then S for the measure of spread you're going to use.